Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity, the podcast that explores what it takes to be well in a busy world with self-care strategies from Chinese medicine. I'm your host, Brody Welch, here to support you on your journey of health, happiness, and personal evolution. This episode is brought to you by my Inner Alchemy Retreat. Hey, what you doing next February? How about you and me and 20 others escape the dark, wet winter and go hang out on a quiet beach in Mexico for a whole week? I'm thinking a world-class retreat center with a 5-star restaurant serving us delicious prana-rich meals, luxury oceanfront bungalows, qigong on the beach. We could do some breathing and moving and some yoga, maybe some snorkeling and surfing, take a long walk at sunset. We'll pulsate between some deep relaxation and deep inquiry work, looking at ourselves through an elemental lens, how wood, fire, earth, metal, and water are at play in our lives, and grounding these concepts in our bodies. You'll emerge feeling renewed with an armload of new self-care tools and a jumpstart on who you're becoming in 2019. I've been leading transformational retreats since 2012, and they are powerful in addition to being a total blast. But don't take my word for it. Head over to the Mexico retreat page at brodywelch.com. That's Brody with an IE and Welch with a CH, and read what past retreat peeps have said. Then sign up. You know you want to, and you deserve it. When you claim your spot by August 1st with the promo code PODCAST, you'll receive a free downloadable copy of my most popular meditations, Advice from Your Future Self, the Healthy Eating Meditation, and the Breathing Bundle. So head to brodywelch.com right now and check it out. Welcome to today's show. Today's guest is a friend of mine who has been on the show before and has actually been one of our more popular episodes. She has just come out with a new book on Chinese dietary therapy, and we're going to get into the energetics of food today. Ellen Goldsmith is a licensed acupuncturist and Chinese herbalist and the author of Nutritional Healing with Chinese Medicine, which includes 175 recipes for optimum health to help people understand really the heart of Chinese medicine's gift of dietary therapy and how we can incorporate it into our daily lives. Ellen is someone I really respect and admire. She's on the faculty at National University of Natural Medicine's College of Classical Chinese Medicine, tongue twister program, and she teaches nutrition and Chinese dietetics. She also has a radio show. She lectures all over the place, and she's just an all-around super knowledgeable person who is really contributing to something I believe in greatly, which is democratizing the wisdom of Chinese medicine to the masses. Ellen Goldsmith, welcome to A Healthy Curiosity.
Thank you, Brody. It's great to be back with you.
I am so glad that you were willing to come back because I've been excited about your book for over a year, ever since hearing that it was going to come out. And I just would love to dive into it. I have a few copies of it already, and I haven't gotten a chance to spend very much time with it. But what I have seen looks like such a necessary addition to the books that I can confidently recommend about Chinese medicine, because things can get really jargony really quickly. And a lot of times, like when we dive into the difference between Chinese medicine and how we typically think about nutritional therapy or dietary therapy, is that people get lost in the specifics really quickly. And I love that your book talks about the overarching principles as well as how to get it specific and how to actually apply it to our lives. That's something that I teach in my Basics of Chinese Medicine course. And it's like trying to just demystify it and make it less confusing is so necessary. But I'd love to know kind of the inspiration behind this book. Why did you decide that it needed to be written and that you were the person to write it?
Well, that's a great question. I think I just wrote it because food has always been really important to me, and I've gone through many phases of eating, different kinds of ways of eating, from just being a lousy vegetarian to a vegan to practicing macrobiotics, which was really the groundwork for my interest in Chinese medicine. It helped me so much. It changed me. It changed how I felt. It changed how I thought. And then working with patients over 25 years, seeing how powerful food is. I say to my Chinese medicine students, look, people are going to come to you for acupuncture. They're going to take their herbs for a while, and they're probably going to be really compliant because they want to get better. But what happens when they stop? They'll still be eating food. So, food is kind of the front line of defense. It's the thing we do every single day, how we interact with nature. And it's very, very powerful medicine. So you eat good food over periods of time, your health is pretty darn good. If you eat lousy food for years on end, there are going to be some health challenges. So I really was inspired a lot by my students. because I saw my Chinese medicine students really struggling with trying to talk to people about Chinese medicine. And I would always say to them, look, you've got to talk to your Aunt Sally in Nebraska who really likes corn dogs, and you've got to be able to say to her, Aunt Sally, look, I know how this can help you. And if you're going to talk about yin and yang with your Aunt Sally, she's going to get confused, even though she's going to act like she wants to please you. So she's going to say, I understand what you're talking about. But I wanted to take this knowledge that is Chinese medicine and has a deep language and paradigm and translate it so that anybody could apply it in their lives. Look, I'm not Chinese and I can apply it.
Absolutely. I love that point about making it understandable to everyone, because ultimately what we do every day, multiplied out, the compound effect, right? Like what we do for long enough absolutely influences how we end up feeling, and even whether, like, what kind of diseases we get or don't get. There's that study that I just read about the effect of processed food consumption and cancer, and
Yes.
that changing it just a little bit can, like that it exponentially, or like that the amount of processed food matters. The more you eat, the more likely you are to get cancer, and that there's this very explicit link. And of course, diabetes, heart disease, these metabolic diseases are so much tied to our diet and lifestyle that it's like we can't not talk about food if we're going to talk about sustainable health.
It's sad to me because the Chinese are really, been so embedded in their culture for thousands of years. I mean, they have a saying, medicine and food share the same origin. That's a very common expression, that food heals and medicine is food. So that's something very deep in the culture. But, if we were to go way, way back, I'm not just talking to our grandparents or great-grandparents, but even before then, every culture has a tradition of food and healing. And there was common sense there about what foods to eat to make you stronger, what foods to eat after childbirth, what foods to eat when you got sick, what foods to eat when you had a fever, what herbs and roots, it's all there. It's just we've lost it. And so I think that the beauty of Chinese medicine is that, and Chinese nutritional healing or food therapy, is that if you connect to the energy of food, is it going to warm you up or cool you down? That's at the most basic level. To really connect to the flavors of food, not just how it tastes in your mouth, but how it makes your body feel. You actually have a chance at being your own food guide, as opposed to needing to kind of, hang on to the latest trend and, quote, healing diet. Because, we need to be able to do that for ourselves. That's a very common, basic kind of, I don't want to say human right, but it's like we have that capacity. So I think that, when we start to connect to food in a different way, we have a better chance of helping our own health.
Yeah. And really a lot of that wisdom of what you need to take to make you feel stronger, or what you might need to take, like food wise, what you might need to make for yourself when you feel like you're getting sick, etc. A lot of these things we really can intuit. The idea of this temperature that food has, that whether it can warm you up or cool you down, a lot of times like that can feel really mysterious until we try it on. And then we're like, oh, right, watermelon's obviously cooling. Like we're not craving that in the middle of winter. And that we're, the warming spices of chai, we're not really having those on a hot summer day. Like that we're just, most of us typically aren't drawn to that particularly. But then also just the directionality of taste, I find like it can also be really intuitive, right? Or like what kind of foods ground you, that if you're needing more of that earth element, it's like you don't necessarily have to look it up in a book to know that a sweet potato is going to help you feel grounded. It's like that's where the nutrition is. That's the season of the year that it comes for us, right? And so just those ideas of getting away from dogma and just trying on these things in our own bodies and noticing what happens.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's a good point, that you too know that we have that capacity to intuit and connect. But, there are a lot of people who are really confused.
Yeah.
And, I think what's useful about, and the way I tried to present it in this book, is that it's a skill. If you learn about paying attention to how food makes you feel, if you learn to pay attention to flavor and making sure that on your plate and in your meal, you have all of the 5 flavors. That's sweet, that's a natural sweet, not added sugar. That's sour, that's salty, that's bitter, and that's pungent, or not spicy, but, almost aromatic, like, nutmeg and dill and basil and cloves and cinnamon, those kinds of things. Or radishes or mustard greens, which are also pungent. If you have all those flavors in a balanced way, but It's not something we learn. It's kind of like posture. We don't learn how to stand up straight. You have to practice it, So, I'm hoping that in this book that you can actually go through it, and whichever chapter you land on, if you dive into that chapter, you'll have, really practical things that you can do to help you learn how to develop your intuition or cultivate your connection to food. That granted, not all of us know what it is to feel grounded. Not all of all of us have good digestion. It really is. I say this a lot in the book, like, I really truly believe, like, if you want to be healthy, you got to cook.
Yes.
But, people don't know how to cook, and it's not anyone's fault. Maybe you didn't have anybody to teach you. Maybe
it's part of our culture's
right.
denial of yin, right? That if it's nourishing and not productive, right? Obviously, we need both the yin and the yang.
Exactly.
But it's like, that's the stuff that, that's women's work. That's useless, right? I'm of course tongue in cheek here.
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody has levels of intimidation on different things. So it's a skill. You can learn it and you can build on it step by step. And you get better at it and you make mistakes and you make a lousy meal. But, it's just a lousy meal. Then
exactly.
Another one.
It's still like making a lousy meal yourself is still way better than eating something ultra processed that's like a prepared frozen meal or something from a microwave or something that has, and that's really where 60% of the calories the average American consumes is coming from an ultra processed food. So really, like, if you want to opt out, and here's the statistic, it's from Chris Kresser's newsletter this week, that a 10% increase in the consumption of ultra processed food leads to a 12% increase in the risk of cancer. So it's just one of those things. Like, an easy step is could just be learn how to make one thing from your book and try it. Do you have a favorite recipe from your book?
Well, I have different favorite recipes for different kinds of things. Like, one of my favorite recipes we're coming out of winter, of course, we're in this transitional period right now, and I have a whole section on transitional recipes. But one of my favorite winter recipes is a nourishing lamb stew that I make with butternut squash, star anise, cinnamon, ginger, Chinese herb called dangui, which helps to, what we say in Chinese medicine, to nourish the blood and move the blood. So it's really, really good for women who feel cold often, or maybe get menstrual cramps, or maybe have, irregular periods. It's just delightful. I mean, I don't eat that. I eat that dish twice a year. To me, it's like medicine, but it's like so delicious. But
that sounds great. I should make that.
It's wonderful.
And if we look at kind of why that's seasonally appropriate, let's dive a little deeper into that. So first of all, if we think about what is nourishing, drawing the distinction, I believe you're using the term nourishing in like we would as practitioners, that nourishing is supportive. It's adding chi and blood in this case to the body, as opposed to eliminating, moving, or detoxifying, as we might think about it. So if this is as an example of something nourishing, like a green smoothie might be an example of something that is clearing, detoxifying, probably cooling, depending on what you have in it.
Right, so, but we wouldn't use, if we're going to, in this book, we don't do a lot of raw. So
exactly.
So hard on your digestion. So if you're a smoothie person and you're cold a lot, we got to find something else for you to have, because, you could detoxify the body in many different ways without, having cold, raw vegetables. So that's an interesting kind of topic.
Definitely. And those same ingredients perhaps could be soup, having all those things warm. So, but getting back to your lamb stew with the butternut squash and the cinnamon and things like that. So it sounds like, you've got a mammal, and you've got a young mammal in there. You've got some warming spices and, which are all, kind of help to tonify our chi and our yang energy. Could you take us through that a little bit? Like, why this time of year do we need that?
We're moving into spring, so you may not need it right now, but you asked me what was my favorite. So that's
totally. Yeah. Good. It was your favorite maybe a month ago or 2 months ago when we were still in winter.
Right. So animal food is, except for fish, animal food is generally warming and will build blood. Why is that important? Well, for women, it's really important because we lose blood every month.
Yes.
In childbirth, we lose a lot of blood. We use our blood to nourish the fetus. So lamb is a very good, warm, blood-building meat. Is good, like I said, for women who feel cold a lot, or may feel their menses are a little irregular or super light. The dangui, in food, as in an herbal medicine, when you put certain things together, they can enhance each other. So the lamb is warming, it's good for the blood. You add dangui to it, which is used to nourish, warm, and enhance circulation and blood. You put that with the lamb, they kind of enhance each other.
A little synergy happening. Kind of like we use in herb formulas. One of the reasons that Chinese herbs are so safe a lot of times is because we're not using mass quantities of one ingredient extracted. We're using herbs that work together and bring out different attributes of one another.
Exactly. And then the ginger, actually the lamb, the ginger, and the dangguai together in just a very simple broth is, it echoes a very traditional Chinese medicinal lamb soup called Qianyan Jin Yao Fang, which was given to women postpartum who experienced a cold in their abdomen. So we have like this kind of Chinese formula at the base of it. And then when you put the cinnamon in, that too is very warming. And every herb and food has an affinity for a different part of the body. And cinnamon has an affinity for the kidneys, which according to Chinese medicine also corresponds to the reproductive system. So you're having this very exalted kind of nourishing dish. And then you add in the sweetness of the butternut squash, which is very beneficial for the stomach and for digestion. And then the kind of moderating aspect of the Swiss chard, which will, is a little cooling, a little bit, pungent and sweet kind of in its effect and has a nice effect on the liver. So as much as it's warming and nourishing, you're also having other things in there that, are just a little bit of moderating. So it's not like you don't eat the dish and then go, oh my God.
Right. It's got some levity from the chard, and the chard is also going to be blood building, right?
Right.
In that it's a leafy green. And just so that for people who might be less familiar with Chinese medicine's terminology, that the word blood we're using with a capital B to indicate not only the red stuff that runs in our veins and that it provides the raw materials for the menstrual period and for fertility, but also the moistens and nourishes pretty much every tissue. So things like flexibility of the muscles and tendons, moisture in the eyes, memory is, form of heart blood, liver blood, etc. And really moistening dryness and anywhere it might be is that if you have dry anything, you could look to nourishing blood potentially as help.
So one thing that I did in this book was, in terms of the recipes for people to know, is that, all of the recipes are organized by season, because all of us live in seasons,
Yes.
We can understand that. So I think even if let's say you don't even want to read the book, if you just look at the recipes, and every section has breakfast, soups, meat, fishes, and other mains, vegetables, snacks, teas and tonic beverages, and desserts, and the whole book is gluten-free, that you'll see that, wow, these, I may have mixed greens in the winter, but when I mix it with a little lemon rind pickle and eggs, that's a little bit different than having mixed garlicky greens in the spring that has this kind of pungent, dispersing effect. So we wanted to do, these recipes in the season because we all live in seasons. And then I have a chapter on postpartum. So that's for women after childbirth, because it's so important to build our blood up since we're talking about blood. But then, the real thought came, okay, you're a mom or you're a dad or you're cooking for a family, and, everybody kind of likes different things. Like, what do you do? And the thing is, you got to make one meal, because you can't be cooking like 5 different meals for 5 different people. But what you can do is you can go to the condiment section, and there are all of these amazing condiments that have therapeutic value, that are really yummy, and you can make a few and just have them on the table, and people can kind of flavor their meal, as they wish.
That makes so much sense. And then everybody can get the flavor profile that they're interested in, and that maybe is medicine for them.
Exactly. So you have things like a pungent Sichuan turnip pickles. So these are these turnips just cut into little squares, sitting with salt for a while, rinsed out, then put in some Sichuan peppercorns, which you have to get online or at a Chinese herbalist, and a little bit of ginger root and black sesame seeds, and you just let them sit for a while, and you have this earthy, a little bit aromatic, pungent kind of pickle that you can add to the plainest dinner you've ever eaten, which could just be rice and vegetables, or just, something super simple. Or you can make something like a walnut and black sesame sprinkle that has, crushed roasted walnuts and black sesame with a little bit of coconut sugar, which is a very kind of nourishing and yin-yang kind of balancing condiment you can put on a cereal, or you can put over fruit even if you like. And then I have different vinegars and chutneys, some umeboshi, which is a very sour and salty plum, with jasmine tea leaves, which is kind of a variation on fermented tea leaves that you'll have in Burma, Myanmar, or Southeast Asia. So you can have all these yummy little condiments that you can use to moderate your own meal. Or let's say you're eating leftovers, right? The whole thing like cook on one day so you have leftovers for 3. It gets a little dull. So if you add different condiments to it, or just, chop up some fresh ginger or scallion, then you can enliven your meal and bring some chi, some vitality back to it.
Absolutely. It's really easy to blow off the condiments. And yet a lot of times that things that you just need a little tiny bit of have a lot of nutritional potency.
Absolutely.
Right? If we think about just a couple of forkfuls of sauerkraut or something fermented, that can be amazing to help our gut flora and help our digestion. And that like the things that you don't necessarily want very much of, like we can think of food as basically weak herbs or herbs as strong food. So something like the black sesame seeds, that's going to be a kidney yin herb, right? Walnuts, more like, both moistening for the intestines, but, like just that they're going to have an effect. They're going to have subtle energetics that are at work that if you add up all of those little subtleties, it's like taking an extra few doses of herbs a day that are steering you in the right direction for your particular imbalance. Seems like that could be great.
Well, it is too. And I think, the difference that lies also with herbs and food, even though they share the same origin and they both really are medicine, for the most part, people who take when you take Chinese herbs, it's not exactly the yummiest thing you're doing.
Right? Exactly.
And so you kind of, I always tell people, if you like it, sip it. If you don't, just down it, the herbs. But the thing about food is that it is a sensual experience. I mean, the stomach, shaoxin, means in Chinese the small heart. So we want to nourish ourselves and we want to find pleasure and enjoyment in it, so that we want to, eat well and we want to feel good. I think I understand it, but it breaks my heart when people go, oh, but then I can't eat the things I like. And like, what am I going to eat? And if I were to tell them what I eat, they would think, I don't know, I feel like I eat everything and I love food, but I don't eat sugar and I don't eat wheat and I really don't tolerate dairy and I don't eat processed foods and I don't drink coffee. I do have some black dark chocolate and stuff, but I don't feel deprived at all, So I think you have to have mercy on yourself,
Absolutely.
Change how you eat. And you have to be a little adventurous and try things that you just would never want to try.
I think those are both really good points, that we've got to like our lives. And if we're eating several times a day, we should like what we're eating and we can lead with desire. And so like when I'm giving someone a food list of things that might be medicine for their particular imbalance, I make sure to say like, choose the things you like off this list. Don't feel like you have to make friends with things that you utterly hate or but definitely if there's things that are unusual that you don't know if you like them or not, then give it a try, see what happens. Right. I'm wondering, like, there's so much, you mentioned earlier, the confusion around what to eat in our culture, and that clearly weight loss is a concern for a lot of people, or like not gaining weight is a concern for a lot of people. I should put it that way. So right now we're in this phase of really demonizing carbohydrates and kind of fetishizing fat and protein above the, and I'd like for you to just talk about maybe a little bit of the energetics of why each of those, what the role might be of foods of carbs, protein, and fat, so that we can maybe get out of the good, bad binary that a lot of us get caught in.
Yeah, I mean, there's that good, bad binary. I mean, I think that comes out of really an epidemic of gastrointestinal distress and disease from generations of processed hybridized grains that are laden with Roundup and glyphosates.
Yes.
I mean, the problem a lot of times with the GI stuff is not the wheat,
right?
But it's the fact that you have Roundup is used at the end of the wheat growing season. Conventional wheat is sprayed with Roundup, so it dies, so it's easy to harvest. And what you have then is it goes into your gut, it breaks down your intestinal walls essentially, and so there's an epidemic of terrible distress, whether it be inflammatory bowel disease, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, IBS, leaky gut, you name it. And so I think the demonization comes out of a real problem, but the problem is ecological. The problem is processed foods, which uses tons of this kinds of stuff. And if we really just ate a nice variety of foods, lots of vegetables, some animal food, if you can tolerate, if you eat it, I recommend people eat a little bit of animal food in general. Some fruits, some grains, nuts and seeds, fats and oils, you're going to be pretty damn good. But I think what's happened is we have a lot of these kind of, paleo, ketogenic, high fat, because people are in great distress and great problems, so that a lot of times these are used almost medicinally and therapeutically as a recommended diet. So if you're doing that kind of ketogenic thing because you have cancer or because of some more serious illness or diabetes, etc., that's not going to be a long-term solution. That's a short-term solution to solve a problem. Then you have to find how to get back to eating all of the big variety of foods. And I really talk about them in the food group there, in all the food groups, how we look at them from Chinese medicine, so that you can eat for the rest of your life. And the real problem, I just want to say this, I think
please.
it's really important. It's not so much what we eat. Well, it is what we eat, but it's how we digest it.
Absolutely.
And how we absorb it and how we transform it. And the problem is that people's digestion, transformation, absorption capacities are really low functioning. So that's why I dedicated a whole chapter in the book to the stomach and the spleen and tried to make it super understandable for human beings who aren't Chinese medicine practitioners.
Yeah, let's unpack that in just a second. But I want to circle back to two things that you said that really stood out for me is yes, the epidemic of digestive issues is very real, and that there's studies that show that wheat is inflammatory to the lining of the small intestine in 100% of humans, right? Not just the people who show up as celiac or, who are suffering with it. And the fact that there's a big difference between having some rice or some quinoa or some squash or a potato and living on a processed food that's made with something that kills the microbes and that's inflammatory for our digestive system. So, and really that, yes, sugar feeds cancer. And so staying away from it is great in the short term. But yes, ultimately that really each of the macronutrients has its place and its job as nutrition. And that's going to vary depending on the season, depending on our personal needs and our ability to digest, certainly. And so anyway, so I just wanted to underscore some of those points. But let's talk about the spleen and stomach a little bit. I think it makes a lot of intuitive sense when I tell patients, you're not what you eat, you're what you digest. And they nod. But a lot of times, we don't even talk about in our culture what it means to have good digestion. And I'd love to just do a little education right now about kind of what all the spleen and stomach is responsible for and how we can make it easy on the spleen stomach to break down the food that we're trying to give it.
Well, we eat, we chew, hopefully we chew, and then we swallow, and it lands in your stomach. And the stomach really is considered the most important of all young organs. It's paired with the spleen in Chinese medicine, but it really is the origin of what we call in Chinese medicine, our postnatal qi. So the stomach is also the most acidic organ in the body. You need high stomach acid to help that food break down more so that it can send that slurry mixture to the small intestine. Now, what happens is if you are, that smoothie drinker out there, or you're just getting stuff grab and go from a grocery store, just eating lots of raw food, cold juices, salads, etc., you're putting a lot of cold food into your body, and your body's saying, hey, that's cold. So that's got to use a lot of what we call in Chinese medicine, your digestive fire, or that acid in your stomach and that heat in your stomach to warm the food up so it can, break it down. So you're using energy where you shouldn't be. It's kind of like turning the heat on because it's cold outside, but you have the windows open. You want to have food that's slightly cooked, even steamed slightly, or room temperature, so that your cooking pot, your stomach, can start to break it down. And then when that gets broken down and it goes to the small intestine, the spleen kind of kicks in and helps the stomach, and it starts to help distribute the nutrients throughout the body. And, you need a lot of metabolic energy to do that. So where the stomach needs to be moist and filled with stomach acid, the spleen, we say, needs warmth and dryness so it can help to transform and refine food into nourishment. Now, people are going, well, what does the spleen actually do? And it's this little organ that's stuck between your stomach, your pancreas, and the left kidney. And it's really considered a storage container, and it helps to filter for blood, and it's the largest lymph node in our body. So even though it's not a physical part of the digestive system, it's connected by all the blood vessels to the stomach and the pancreas, which we know is very important for metabolism of sugar. So what happens when we can't transform food is we can't break down food is we feel like, the food is kind of stuck. or we feel bloated, or we feel lethargic or tired after eating. These are really big, signs that your digestion is just not up to snuff.
Yeah. Or maybe on a lab test, it would show that you're deficient in things like vitamin D or B12 or other minerals that are difficult to break down, because we need the stomach to do that, and to be able to hack into the nutrition that we've got going on.
Right. If you're eating and you get tired after eating, your digestion is not working optimally.
Yes.
If you eat and you feel kind of full for a really, really long time, your digestion is not working properly. If you eat and you get bloated or gas, your digestion is not working properly. It's sluggish. And so, it's really good if you see an acupuncturist or a naturopathic doctor or a nutritionist to really talk about that. Because most people, they think digestion is just the poop that comes out. And no, it's way before that. That's part of it.
And it's connected to things like the stomach and spleen are responsible for our mental clarity, our ability
Absolutely.
to focus and concentrate. So really important to not be eating while studying and, taxing the spleen and stomach on two levels at once, and to be relaxed, because if you're eating in a rushed, tense way, you're likely not allowing these organs to really do their jobs. It's like we really can't be in rest and digest mode if we're also in fight or flight mode. It's binary. So you got to definitely take the time to slow down, take some breaths before you eat.
Sitting down helps too.
Oh yeah. That's like one of the things that I've been working on for an embarrassingly long time is not munching while I'm preparing dinner, or just like that idea of sit, because I can be very mindful at a meal, but beforehand, like just that stuff is unconscious and hard to break out of it.
Yeah. And we all say, I want to go to Europe and sit around and eat for 2 hours. Well, eat for 2 hours. Do it at home.
Exactly. Right. Don't need the vacation, actually, but take one. Yeah. Take vacations.
Do take vacations.
And enjoy the food. This conversation is making me wonder why, especially the recipes and the condiments, why this book is still at my office and I don't have a copy here in my kitchen, because it's inspiring to me. I'm really looking forward to diving in and exploring some of these amazing recipes.
I'm always happy to hear. I would love to hear what recipes people are enjoying, because sometimes they pick things like I wouldn't pick off the top.
Right, we all have different tastes. For sure.
That's so much fun to find out. So, if you're a listener and you want to comment and let us know what you like, that I would just love to hear.
Yeah. And where can people pick up your book?
You can pick it up everywhere, which is so exciting. Of course, it's on Amazon, and it's pretty darn cheap on Amazon right now. It's at Barnes & Noble. It's at Powell's in Portland.
Yay.
It's online on a whole bunch of online book places. It's in your public library. And
excellent.
Do not call them up and say, hey, could you get a copy?
Awesome.
I'm from New York, and I said, I wonder if it's in New York. It is. I said, I wonder if it's in Brooklyn. It's in Brooklyn. It's in Portland, so it's everywhere. And pick up copies.
I'll definitely include a link to it in the show notes. The title again, Nutritional Healing with Chinese Medicine, plus 175 recipes for optimal health.
We have a Facebook page, Nutritional Healing with Chinese Medicine. So come to our Facebook page, like us, and, every time I put up bunches of quotes from the book, and, we'll have some fun little activities on the Facebook page as well.
Ellen, thank you so much for taking the time to share your wisdom with A Healthy Curiosity's listeners yet again. I really, really appreciate being able to chat with you.
It's always a pleasure, Brody, to talk with a fellow sister in Chinese medicine. So thank you.
Hashtag culture changing. Yay.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening today. For more episodes of A Healthy Curiosity, you can visit the iTunes store. If you appreciated today's show, please leave us a review. This helps other people to find the podcast. You can also head to brodywelch.com, where you can find free self-care resources, learn more about Chinese medicine, and let me know what you'd like to hear about on future episodes. I'd love to hear from you. Till next time, be good to yourself.